Let's start this off with the Toronto Blue Jays. Over the last few years, the Blue Jays have had plenty of talent. They've made a lot of signings, a lot of trades, but they have not been able to get over the hump in the postseason, and this year, they fell completely flat. Now, looking at the offense first, pretty middle of the road for the most part, 14th overall in offense on the year. Now, Vlad Jr. did have himself an amazing year, looking like his old self from 2021. Absolutely fantastic this year, and a couple of younger guys stepping up as well for them. You got Spencer Horwitz having himself a good year. Will Wagner, after coming over from the Astros in the Yusei Kikuchi trade, he's looked pretty solid for the most part, but a lot of down years as well. George Springer, Dalton Varsho looking pretty underwhelming for the most part. Didn't really get all that much from Davis Schneider, Alejandro Kirk, Addison Barger as well. However, the biggest one of all was Bo Bichette. Had the worst year of his career this year, dealt with a lot of injuries, looked completely lost at the plate. Now, when it comes to Bo Bichette, I do expect the Blue Jays to move on from Bo Bichette this offseason. There's been reports over the last few months suggesting that he's ready to move on from Toronto. I say for the Blue Jays, trade him this offseason, start fresh at shortstop next year. When it comes to the pitching side of things, they were also pretty middle of the road. They ranked 16th overall in Fangraph wins above replacement. They had some up and down years from Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassett, and Jose Barrios. Gausman and Bassett didn't really look like themselves from last year, while Jose Barrios, he struggled with home runs this year, 1.4 home runs per 9. That's why he has a high FIP at 4.70 compared to the ERA at 3.52. Alek Manoah, looking like he was going to make a comeback this year. He was showing some decent signs early on, but he ended up needing to get elbow surgery, so let's see how he's going to do for next year. Now, one bright spot, you got Bowden Francis. He looked pretty decent towards the end of the year, had a no-hitter against the Angels going into the 9th inning in that one start. ERA at a 3.50. Now, the FIP is at a 4.49. The big reason for that was the home run ball, 1.6 home runs per 9, so he's going to have to work on that, but a pretty solid strikeout to walk ratio. Don't forget about Jake Bloss. They got him back in the Yusei Kikuchi trade, so I think for the rotation, they're still pretty strong for the most part. Maybe they could make an addition to this rotation, we'll see, but they need to do something about this bullpen. 30th overall, dead last in the major leagues this year. ERA at a 4.83, FIP at a 4.95. They got lit up by the home runs this year, 1.49 home runs per 9. That is absolutely terrible. They're going to have to do something with this bullpen. What makes this offseason so crucial for them, though, are the other teams around them. The Yankees and the Orioles are both looking very strong this year and probably not slowing down next year with all the talent they have. The Red Sox are also looking to take a step forward with a bunch of young talent getting close to major league ready down in the minor leagues. The Rays, they always have a good farm system, and they added more to it at the deadline. So the Blue Jays need to have a good offseason to keep pace. It's going to be tough, though, because there's not really a whole lot of wiggle room when it comes to the payroll. As we can see here, this year it's at $240 million. That's a little bit above the first CBT threshold. And when you take a look at the contracts, there's not a whole lot of money coming off the books here. They got a lot of guys locked up. And then you got Vlad Jr. Don't forget about Vlad Jr. here. He's going into the last year of arbitration. He's definitely going to get a raise in his last year of arbitration. And they got to figure out something with a contract extension. So they're probably going to have to be over this CBT once again. And when it comes to the farm system, they rank 23rd overall in Baseball America's farm system rankings. There's not a whole lot of guys down there that can come up and help right away. Now, Aurelvis Martinez, he came up this year for one game, but then he got suspended, so he'll be back at some point next year. So they're going to have to get a lot of production out of the young guys that I've mentioned here. This is a very crucial offseason for them because, like I said, they got a lot of teams around them in the American League that are just getting better, and they're only going to get better and better. They got a tough offseason here, especially with the tight payroll. Let's see how it goes for them, but this is a crucial offseason for Toronto. Moving on to the Washington Nationals, and I think this is a very big offseason for the Nationals. They've been rebuilding for the last few years, but their next core of young players is Major League ready. You got Dylan Cruz, you got James Wood, you got C.J. Abrams, Luis Garcia, only 24 years old, having himself a solid year. Jacob Young emerging this year, showing some promise, some great defense out there in center field, and their rotation has been pretty solid this year. Mackenzie Gore, remember they got him back in the Juan Soto Soto trade, and you got a few guys behind him, Jake Irvin, DJ Hurts, and Mitchell Parker. So I think the Nationals are set up very well here to go into this offseason to make some moves and help them take that next step. And I'm looking at one guy here who's coming off the books, who they're paying a lot of money, Patrick Corbin. I mean, my goodness, they're paying him $35.4 million. All of that is coming off the books. They're going to have a couple of pennies to spend. I expect the Nationals to go out there and make one big move, maybe two. I would imagine they would like to add someone here. Corbin Burnes, I think, would be a great fit for the Nationals. Kind of reminds me of the Max Scherzer signing a little while back. You got guys like Blake Snell, Max Fried in the same division. So they could definitely add something to this rotation to go along Mackenzie Gore at the top of the rotation there. And then you got some bats out there, and one intriguing option could be Juan Soto, right? You traded him away to the Padres a couple of years ago. Could you see a scenario where Juan Soto maybe goes back to the Nationals? I mean, it's very possible. Maybe. We'll see. I would imagine Soto probably wants to stay out in New York. Probably a bit more opportunity there when it comes to the marketing off the field. If not him, you got guys like Pete Alonso also in the same division. You got Tyler O'Neill. You got Anthony Santander. Either way, I think the Nationals are ready to take a step forward. I expect them to have themselves a solid offseason. But how about the Mets here in 2024? My goodness, they got the third wild card spot as we speak, ahead of the Atlanta Braves. Who saw that one coming? What a wackadoodle of a year. But no matter what happens here with the Mets, whether or not they make the playoffs, they have a big offseason coming up. Just look at the payroll. Look at all of the money coming off of the payroll here. Quintana, Severino, Bader, Martinez, Raley, Ottavino, Stanek, Winker, but most of all, Pete Alonso. Now, there were some reports this past year of the Mets and Alonso talking about a possible extension, but it never happened. And Alonso looks like he's going to be going out there to the open market. He's having, once again, a very good season, a lot of power. I could see a lot of teams wanting to add that kind of production to the middle of their lineup. So we'll see. I could definitely see a situation where the Mets bring him back, but you do got Mark Vientos, who broke out in a big way this year. That could be your next first baseman. Brett Baty can get another chance at third base. We'll see, but this is definitely going to be a big task for the Mets. Now, the Mets, they also got some good young talent here, as well as some, core pieces like Francisco Lindor, who's having himself an MVP caliber season. Big debate right now with Lindor and Ohtani, who's the MVP, right? Kadai Senga, he has been hurt this year, but he should be back next year, right? You got Edwin Diaz there, obviously one of the best relievers in baseball when he's right, when he's healthy. So the Mets, they got pieces, and they got some younger guys coming up from the minor leagues in the next couple of years here, possibly even next year, right? Brandon Sproat, he's broken out in a big way in the minor leagues this year. Jet Williams was injured a lot this year, but he's shown a lot of promise in the minor leagues. Someone like Blade Tidwell is getting closer to major league ready. So there's some young talent emerging here, but the Mets, because of all of these players that are hitting free agency, along with a few guys in the rotation, as well as Sean Manaea, I forgot to mention him, he can opt out after this year, and it is expected that he is going to opt out. He's having himself a solid year, so they're losing 3 guys in their rotation here, so they're going to have to do something. Maybe they could turn to someone like Corbin Burnes. Maybe they could look to a possible trade of someone like Garrett Crochet out there, right? So you are going to have some possible options out there that the Mets could go to, but the big one that everyone's going to be paying attention to is Juan Soto. I do expect him to stay with the Yankees at the end of the day, but Steve Cohen, he's going to do everything he can to try and get this guy to come to Queens. So either way, the Mets, they have a lot going on this winter. It's going to be very interesting to see what they end up doing here, but for 2024, having a great season, but I'm looking to see what they do this offseason to keep it going. Moving on to the Detroit Tigers, and this season was very underwhelming for them. A lot of people had them winning the division this year, but in the end, they just couldn't quite get anything going, despite having a good group of young players up at the major league level. Now, the problem with the Tigers this year was the offense. Very inconsistent this year, only ranked 22nd in offense on the year. Now, sure, Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, they had solid years. Matt Vierling, Parker Meadows, they did show a couple of things this year, but Spencer Torkelson, he took a massive step back this year, ended up getting sent back down to the minor leagues. Let's see what happens for him this coming offseason. I wonder if the Tigers end up moving on from him. And then you got Colt Keith. He had some expectations coming into the year, signed a major league extension without even playing a major league game. Now, he has hit better in the second half, so you're looking for more of a full season from him next year. So they're going to have these guys step up for next year. Now, with the Tigers going into this offseason, they have a lot of payroll space. Javier Baez, I forgot to mention him as well. He's been absolutely just abysmal this year. I mean, let's see if he can get anything going throughout the rest of this contract. I'm not quite sure. But despite that, they have a lot of payroll flexibility. So if they wanted to add something to this offense, I mean, they very well could, and also I forgot to mention too, Jace Young. This guy had a great year down in the minor leagues. I think he's going to help this offense out next year, along with Trey Sweeney. It looks like he's finally found a home. He's been bouncing around between teams in trades, and so far he's hit pretty well with the Tigers. So I do expect these young bats to take a step forward for next year. However, they're going to have to add a veteran bat, in my opinion. Could they go out there and maybe add someone along the lines of a Pete Alonso, depending on what happens with Spencer Torkelson? I could maybe see that being a good fit. Maybe someone like a Tyler O'Neill or an Anthony Santander for a corner outfield spot. Maybe do some DH duties as well. And also, I want to mention the pitching. Tarek Skubal, he's been amazing this year, probably going to win the Cy Young in the American League, but I feel like they could add something alongside him at the top of the rotation. Could you go with one of these guys I've mentioned prior? Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, or Max Fried. You got some other arms out there that won't cost as much as these guys, but I think in the end, the Tigers, with all of this payroll flexibility, with all of this good young talent, and just the underwhelming season this year, I think this needs to be a big offseason for them. Moving on to the San Francisco Giants. They had an exciting offseason last year. They made a lot of moves. They signed Blake Snell, Matt Chapman, Jung-Hoo Lee, Jordan Hicks, Jorge Soler. They traded for Robbie Ray, but in the end, a very underwhelming season for the San Francisco Giants. It looks like they're on their way to finishing with a record possibly under 500. That is no bueno. Now, I think for the Giants this coming offseason, I think it's a big offseason for them, considering, where they're at in this division, right? The Dodgers are always strong. The Diamondbacks look like they're going to be strong for years to come. The Padres have been very good this year. I think the Giants need to make some good moves this coming offseason to get themselves right back into the thick of things, at least get them into a better position for the wild card race next year. Now, taking a look here at the Giants, I think there's a few areas they're going to have to address this offseason. Now, taking a look at the offense, they ranked 18th overall in offense on the year. They got good years here from Tyler Fitzgerald, Matt Chapman, Elliot Ramos. Those guys were very good this year. Lamont Wade Jr., Mike Yastrzemski, they were decent this year, but they need to take a look at some of these guys down here. Patrick Bailey, excellent defensively, but not much with the bat. Wilmer Flores, Tyler Estrada, they really dropped off this year. And then Jung-Hoo Lee, I just mentioned him a second ago, ended up getting a shoulder injury this year that cut his season short. He should be back next year, so I do expect that to help out the lineup. But I feel like with the Giants lineup, I feel like they could use a little bit more beef in the middle of the order, provide some more protection in the middle of the order. I would love for them to maybe look at someone like a Pete Alonso. That would be a lot of power for the middle of their order. A big right-handed bat, I think, would fit nicely there. If not him, maybe you can do Christian Walker. He's having another good season with the Diamondbacks this year. 25 home runs, WRC plus of 124. He's going to be going after the big free agents. They do every single year. Who knows if they're going to be able to get Juan Soto to come to San Francisco. I feel like in the end, he is probably going to stay with the Yankees or he'll go to the Mets. Now, but the Giants, right? They're always in it. They're always trying to lure guys to go there. I think they'll throw money at him, but in the end, I think they will fall short there. Taking a look at the pitching side of things. Now, when it came to the pitching this year with the Giants, it was a little up and down. 23rd overall in starting pitching, Fangraph wins above replacement. Now, they got a good year again from Logan Webb. Blake Snell, just mentioned him a second ago. He was awful in the first half, but he was excellent in the second half. Threw a no-hitter in the second half as well. Now, Kyle Harrison, really his first full season here, 24 starts. Not great numbers, but hey, this guy's really young. I expect him to take a step forward for next year. Keaton Wynn, he was hurt this year. They got a couple other younger guys in there like Hayden Burnsong, saw some time. Jordan Hicks ended up getting moved to the bullpen. It looked like he was kind of running out of gas there in the second half. I expect Jordan Hicks to be back in the rotation next year. Looking at Blake Snell, I mean, that's going to be a big item to to check off for this offseason. I think the Giants would love to bring him back, especially with how well he's pitched in the second half. Maybe they could do a similar thing like they did with Matt Chapman, right? Get him signed up to, like, say, a 5-6 year deal, something along those lines, and keep him in your rotation for the foreseeable future. I could definitely see that. If not Blake Snell, I could definitely see them, looking at possibly someone like Max Fried. Let's see about that. He is a California guy. Maybe they could lure him to go there. Or maybe one of these lower tier options like a Luis Severino, a Jose Quintana, maybe someone like a Frankie Montas, who's looked a lot better with the Brewers since going over there. Now, I also think the Giants are going to have to address the relief pitching. 24th overall in relief pitching FWAR this year. Now, Ryan Walker had an excellent year out of the bullpen. One of the most underrated players in all of Major League Baseball this year. A 1.84 ERA, 2.29 on the FIP. They got some other good years, right, from Tyler Rogers, Randy Rodriguez, right? But Camille Duvall had himself a down year this year. My goodness, like, what happened to Camille Duvall? ERA at a 5.02. The walks were just through the roof this year. So I feel like adding something else to this bullpen to provide some insurance behind Camille Duvall, right, to go alongside Ryan Walker, Tyler Rogers, and also Taylor Rogers was pretty decent this year as well. I think adding a little bit more beef to the bullpen, I think, could go a long way. And one other thing to address as well with the Giants, right? They were only 20th overall in defense this year. So one idea that I think could be realistic is maybe looking at someone like Willy Adames, right? I talked about adding Pete Alonso for the middle of the order. Willy Adames, he is great defensively at shortstop. I think he'd be a nice fit with the Giants. Tyler Fitzgerald, he's been getting the bulk of the playing time at shortstop, but he's versatile. He can move to some other positions. I think Willy Adames, right? 30 home runs, a 121 WRC plus, great defense as well. I think that would go a very long way. In the end, I think the Giants just need to make some good quality moves. Yeah, see if you can bring back Blake Snell, but if he's going to be out of your price range, look at some of these other pitchers on the market that you think could give you some good production, and hopefully some of the younger pitching can step up more for next year. And then for the middle of the order, I think you have a lot of good pieces in place here, but I think maybe just adding one more piece for this lineup, a guy like Pete Alonso that can give you a lot of power, or Willy Adames, who could also give you some power along with some good defense. In the end, I think this is a crucial offseason for the Giants, for them to stay competitive in the National League West so they don't keep falling behind, and also just stay competitive in the National League overall. Moving on to the Seattle Mariners, and what a wild ride it's been for the Mariners this year. A lot of expectations coming into the year. A lot of people thought this team could possibly go on a World Series run, especially with all the starting pitching they have. They had some talented players like Julio Rodriguez in the lineup, but here they are, 74-73, 4.5 back in the AL West and the wild card. They're trying to make a late push here, but in the end, it might be too little too late. The main issue with the Mariners this year was the offense, to the point where it got manager Scott Service dismissed. They brought in former Mariner Dan Wilson to be the manager, and they brought back Mariner legend Edgar Martinez to be the hitting coach. Now, up to the point where Service got fired, they were pretty bad when it came to the offense. 21st overall, they led the major leagues in strikeouts. They were terrible at getting on base. However, after they made the switch, they have been a lot better. They're 5th overall in offense since Dan Wilson became the manager. However, I'm looking at the offense here, still only a 396 slugging, so they are doing a better job at getting on base, but I still feel like they're lacking, the beef in the middle of the order, right? Taking a look at some of these years, right? Victor Robles, what a sensation he's been. The Nationals cut ties with him. The Mariners ended up picking him up, and he completely turned his career around, ended up giving him an extension this year. He's been absolutely fantastic. Now, Luke Raley, he's been okay. Dylan Moore, he's got 29 stolen bases. Cal Riley's hitting for more power this year, 30 home runs. But, I'm looking at Julio Rodriguez having himself a down year, only hitting 258, a 102 WRC plus, 14 homers. I mean, these are not numbers you expect with Julio Rodriguez. They did bring in Randy Arozarena. He's been pretty solid since coming over from the Rays. Justin Turner, he's doing a decent job as well. But I'm looking at these other guys down here, right? Garver, Polanco, Haniger. I mean, they have not really done all that much this year. Ty France, he's not even with them anymore. JP Crawford, he's had a lot of injuries this year. He has not done well this year. So now it seems like they have fixed their approach when it comes to the offense, right? They're doing a better job at getting on base. They're working the counts better. They're just having better at-bats overall. So I think that's going to help them in the future, going into 2025. I still feel like they need to reinforce this lineup a little bit. I would love for Julio Rodriguez to have some more protection in this lineup, right? When I'm taking a look at some of these guys on the market. I've already mentioned Pete Alonso a couple of times here, but I think that would be a pretty good fit, right? A guy with some power, definitely beef up the middle of that order. Maybe even someone like a Christian Walker, someone else that can give some good protection. Or maybe they could go outside the box here. I mentioned the starting pitching, right? The starting pitching has been amazing this year, right? Basically a homegrown rotation. Luis Castillo's been pretty solid for the most part this year too. But I wonder if maybe they could deal from a position of strength. Maybe you could look at, someone like Brian Wu or Bryce Miller as a possible trade piece to go land, a big bat out there. Now, Ken Rosenthal, he wrote in an article suggesting, maybe the Red Sox could look into moving Tristan Casas. Maybe they could do a deal, involving one of those guys. Maybe you could even do someone like Luis Castillo there. Maybe that could help get rid of some payroll for the Mariners. The Mariners are always looking at payroll, trying to keep it down. So maybe the Red Sox could work something out. Maybe you could do someone like a Tristan Casas. Maybe they could go outside the box and they could do something that way. Either way, though, I think the Mariners, they need to just have a good quality offseason. It felt like they had that last year, but obviously there were some deeper issues with how they were approaching the offense. Now that it seems like they've got that under control, in my opinion, I still feel like they have some good payroll flexibility here. In the end, I think the Mariners, they need to go out there and they need to have themselves a good offseason because there is just so much young talent on this team. You would hate for that to go to waste next year as well. And last but not least, I'm going to wrap this up with the Red Sox. And excuse Giraffe Neck Robbie here, but even if I wasn't a Red Sox fan, I would still think this is a very important offseason for the Red Sox. Now, last offseason, they brought in Craig Breslow to run the show. He didn't make any major moves. He did trade away Chris Sale, brought in Vaughn Grissom, but that was more to clear payroll. He made a couple of smaller moves, or I did bring in Tyler O'Neill, ended up having himself a bounce back year, but no major blockbuster moves. And this year, the Red Sox, they showed they have taken a lot of steps forward here. They were well above expectations for this year. Not a lot of people were high on the Red Sox this year, especially on the pitching side of things. They also brought in Andrew Bailey last offseason, and he has completely shown to turn around this rotation. This rotation has been fantastic this year. Now, when it comes to this coming offseason, now that they've had the success this year, along with all of the young talent they have down in the major leagues, right? They got the #1 prospect in all of Major League Baseball now, Roman Anthony. You also got Marcelo Meyer, Kyle Teal as well, Christian Campbell. So I definitely think there is a lot to look forward to with the Red Sox. And all of these guys down in the minor leagues are getting close to Major League ready. But the Red Sox, they gotta, look at where they're at now. They are just about to enter a competitive window, and this offseason could absolutely be the one where they pull the trigger and make a couple of big moves to add to this young core that's coming up, along with young players that they already have on the Major League roster. Jarren Duran has broken out in a big way this year. Wilyer Abreu's a Rookie of the Year candidate, right? Tristan Casas did miss a lot of time this year with a rib injury, but this is a guy with a big bat, had a great year last year, only just about to turn 25 years old. Ceddanne Rafaela showed a lot of good things this year. And getting back to the rotation, like I said, they showed a lot this year. Tanner Houck took a big step forward this year. Brian Bayo took a bit of a step back, but still showed some flashes of what he could be. Cutter Crawford, good in the first half, but fell off in the second half a bit. Nick Pivetta is going to be a free agent, so what happens there? Cooper Criswell, pretty underrated guy this year. You got Lucas Giolito coming back next year. You got some other young pitchers. Richard Fitz is probably going to be competing for a major league spot for next year in the rotation. So there's a lot to be excited about with the Red Sox. But like I said, it feels like now is a good time to really add to this emerging core. And getting back to the rotation, right? Corbin Burns could be a guy that you could add atop of this rotation. Maybe they could make a trade with all of these prospects that they have for someone like a Garrett Crochet, or maybe someone like Brian Wu or Bryce Miller on the Mariners, where maybe they could use another bat. And like I said with the Red Sox, right, they got a lot of guys here in this lineup, right? A lot of talented guys, but look at all the lefties they have. Could they maybe deal away someone like Masataka Yoshida, who's more of a, just a light hitting DH at this point? He's not really going to give you all that much in the field. Maybe the Red Sox can eat a good amount of that contract to send him elsewhere that can clear up or give some more flexibility for this lineup here. Wilyer Bray, right? He's got a good amount of value. He's got a lot of control, good bat. You know, maybe they could use him in a trade to maybe bring in some pitching. And Jarren Duran, like I said, he broke out in a huge way this year. He would absolutely be able to land a top starting pitcher out there. So there's a lot that the Red Sox can do. There's a lot of things that they have to take care of. You know, Kenley Jansen, he's going to be gone, so that money is going to be coming off the books along with Chris Martin. So they are going to have some payroll flexibility here. So the Red Sox, I expect them to be very active this offseason. I expect them to make a good couple of moves here to help them compete for not just next year, but the next few years. Now, everyone, that's all I got. And I know there's a lot of teams out there that need to have crucial off seasons. I could go on about this all day. I just don't want the video to be too long. You know, if I were to kind of just run through some teams here, you know, maybe a team like the St. Louis Cardinals as well, they need to have a big off season. Feels like they're kind of just sitting in la la land at this point. They got a lot of talent. They got some young players as well, but they're kind of just sitting in the middle, right? Could they maybe make a couple of big moves, right? The Chicago Cubs, they had an underwhelming season. They got a lot of young talent. What moves could they make this offseason to help them take that next step? So there's a lot of teams out there that absolutely need to have big off seasons. These teams, in my opinion, I feel like, at least just to me, have the most crucial off seasons coming up. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I want to hear what you have to say. What other teams do you think need to have big off seasons to set them up for 2025 and beyond? But everyone, that's all I got for this video. If you can on the way out, hit that like button for me, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.